In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, we give him praise and thanks for his mercy and his goodness to the human family. If all the trees upon the earth were pens to write with, and if all the oceans were ink, and then another 7 oceans to add to its supply, the writing would still not be enough to explain the glory of God, for he's the exalted, all-powerful, all-wise. We praise no other in our good fortune, and we confide in no other in our time of need. And even if I live to be 1,000, it still would not be enough to thank him for his many blessings and gifts. I greet everyone in words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. That simply means peace unto you, to all of our family, no matter what your system of knowledge, ideology, or religion is. It all means peace. I'm getting right to it tonight. Tonight's topic is self-reflection. Please forgive me, striving to heal our community. I'm going to say it again, part 3. Self-reflection. Please forgive me, striving to heal our community. Part 3. The other 2 parts I did was fighting the urge and temptation not to gossip and slander. And the first one I concentrated on friendships, and then part 2 was fighting the urge not to gossip and slander, but I concentrated on the family. We're going to bring it all together tonight in part 3, no matter whether it's family or friend. And the reason I use the phrase, please forgive me, is typically when something goes wrong, if you do something wrong or something was done wrong to you, you expect what? An apology, or for someone to say, I'm sorry, right? So this is what we're concentrating on tonight. Humbling yourself and either accepting an apology, or humbling yourself and give us quote unquote apology, or say I'm sorry when it's needed. But before we get into that, I want to clear up a little language. Because of the English vernacular, so to speak, we are so used to using them terms. If we're humble enough to use it, I'm sorry or I apologize. But from a spiritual standpoint, and from a standpoint of being as sincere as you are to heal that wound, I'm here to tell you tonight, I recommend you don't use those first 2 terms, I'm sorry or I apologize. I'm sorry is suggesting that you're either wretched, defeated, or worthless. Listen to what you're saying. I'm sorry. You've heard people use that before. You just like you're a sorry, no good daddy. Well, that's a sorry football team, meaning they're worthless. And all of us are worth something, right? All of us have the potential to be great. So I recommend you don't use that term anymore. I'm sorry. No, you're not sorry. You're great. And I'm going to get to what I recommend. I just said it real quick, but it may have jumped over your head when I gave the actual title of this topic. Another term that we use when something goes wrong and we have to approach someone because of the English vernacular is, I apologize. I recommend you don't use that either. Well, Brother Shareef, what's wrong with that? Nothing really wrong with it, but with something so sensitive, we want to be as sincere as possible. So I said, I recommend don't using sorry, because it sounds like you're saying you're defeated or worthless, and none of us are worthless, and you shouldn't feel defeated. Do you know the word apology comes from, it's a offspring from the root word, from a Greek word, apologia? Yes, apologia, if you go in the dictionary, and I'm going to spell it for you, A-P-O-L-A-G-I-A. Apologia is a Greek word that means it's a formal written defense or an excuse for one's behavior. Yes, that's where the word apologize comes from the root word, which is a Greek word, apologia, A-P-O-L-O-G-I-A, and it's a Greek word, listen to this, that means a formal written defense or an excuse for one's behavior. So if you're saying, I apologize, in a way, going off of this definition, you're not really sincere about whatever went wrong. You're actually telling them, I'm giving you an excuse why I did whatever I did, going off of this definition. I'm going to say it one more time. The root word of apologize comes from the Greek word apologia, apologia, which means a formal written defense or an excuse for one's behavior. So you mean to tell me if you murder someone, God forbid, you go to them and say, I'm asking for your forgiveness on this, but here's my written excuse or defense for what I did. So are you really, quote unquote, apologizing for what you did? Because it says it's a written formal defense or an excuse for your behavior. It don't say what the behavior is. It just says it's an excuse. So you got to watch these Greek words. The English language is not a real language. It comes from Latin, it comes from Greek. It's not a real language. That's why when America goes to different countries, they don't use the English language to communicate with other languages, with other countries. A lot of times they use sometimes French, Arabic, because those languages are more pure. Apologia, a written excuse. So you don't want to use that. Well, what should we use, Brother Shareef? You said don't say I'm sorry. Now you're saying I don't say apologize. Remember what the title of the lecture is. Self-reflection. Self-reflection. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. Right? An attempt to heal, striving to heal our community. Again, self-reflection. Please forgive me. An attempt to heal our community. So you should say, please forgive me. Now you're totally submitting that you did something wrong and you're asking whoever you transgressed against to forgive you. And then that person, if they're on the right spiritual path, depending what the transgression is, hopefully they will forgive you. But as we will talk about, the Lord forgives us over and over again every day. So what does the Bible say about forgiveness? And again, I'm not trying to push Christianity or Islam on anyone. I'm just giving you principles that if you're striving for righteousness, you're probably already doing it. I don't believe in the Bible. Okay, but if you're striving for righteousness, do you honor your mother and father? Right? That's in the Bible. Do you believe that you shouldn't steal? That's in the Bible. Do you believe you shouldn't sleep with your neighbor's wife? That's in the Bible. So ain't no one trying to push the Christianity or Islam on you. I'm just taking principles that anyone striving for righteousness, I think we all should agree on. So just think on that. Okay. James chapter 5:16 says, confess your sins to each other, pray for each other so you'll be healed. So we're talking about healing our community and humbling yourself if you do something wrong. Right? One of my favorite, 1 Corinthians 13, chapter 4-7. I quoted this in the last one talking about family, about not gossiping. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It's not proud. It doesn't dishonor others. It's not self-seeking, not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. It does not delight in evil, but it rejoices in truth. It always protects, trusts, hopes, and preserves. And that's in 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7. Again, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11 says, and listen to this, this is deep. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child and I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I gave up childish ways. So what it's saying, and now it's talking about maturity. It is immature not to humble yourself and say, I did something wrong. Will you please forgive me? And it is also immature to be so stuck on yourself, like the last verse said, it's not proud, it's not boastful, and it's not self-seeking, to not ever want to forgive anyone for anything. We got people in our community, people in our family, walking around holding grudges, either because that person didn't come to them sincerely and say, please forgive me. Please forgive me. And then the other person may have not wanted to give forgiveness. We all sin in some way or another. We all sin. And I'm not saying if someone murders 5-6 people in your family or molests the whole family, I ain't talking about that. I'm not saying don't forgive them. Those are some huge transgressions. But I'm just talking about forgiveness. And again, I'm not saying don't forgive it. And I ain't saying you should, but those are some huge transgressions. But I'm just talking about things that can really be fixed if we humble ourselves. So when I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I gave up childish ways. Talking about being mature. Okay, Ephesians chapter 4 verse 32 says, be kind to each other, sympathetic, forgiving to each other as God has forgiven you. Right? Be kind to each other, sympathetic, forgiving as God has forgiven you. Stuff happens. It isn't so much that things happen, it's how we handle it when it happens. And it just hurts me that family is divided for years and years and got all this strife. My family too. Because someone won't forgive the other person, or someone don't say, will you please forgive me? But you got to be sincere. You got to be sincere. You can't keep mess going and keep doing the same thing and then expect someone to open up their heart to you and forgive you. And you got strife in your heart, evil intentions. You continue to do evil like certain people in my family and then expect someone to forgive you. You got to give up your evil ways sincerely. Hebrews chapter 12 verse 14 says, make every effort to live in peace with everyone. Be holy. Without holiness, no one will see God. Let me say that again. Make every effort to live in peace with everyone. Be holy. Without holiness, no one will see God. Very deep, very deep. So those are Bible verses and the principles of Ma'at, which came before Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. A lot of those tenets talk about keeping the peace. I won't disturb the peace. I will not make someone cry. The principles of Ma'at. Now, I will not make someone cry. Why would you deliberately hurt someone? And if you made an error, we all make mistakes. And remember, the longer you're in a relationship with someone, no matter whether it's a friendship, a family member, your mother, your father, your wife, your significant other, the longer you're with that person, the more chance is going to come up that it's going to be a disagreement. So it's not so much the disagreement, it's what you do with it once those situations come up. But you got to be sincere and willing to humble yourself about making amends for something that went wrong. Now the Quran. What does the Quran say about arrogance? Because a lot of this not wanting to come to someone and say, please forgive me. Because remember, the lecture is called Self-Reflection. Please forgive me. Striving to heal our community. A lot of this is arrogance. Just being straight up arrogant. In Quran 39, let me get 39 verse 60. Yes, 39 verse 60. And read the Quran for yourself. Don't go off what other people say. Right? I talked about that before. This is talking about arrogance. Very simple. On the day of judgment, wilt thou see those who told lies against God? Their faces will be turned black, and there is not in the hell abode for the haughty. Meaning there's no place for you in the kingdom if you're haughty, meaning arrogant. In Quran 39, again, it says, on the day of judgment, wilt thou see those who told lies against God? Their faces will be turned black. Is there not in hell an abode for the haughty? Now, 39 verse 72, talking about being arrogant. To them will be said, enter ye the gates of hell to dwell therein. Evil is the abode for the arrogant. Enter, it will be said to them, enter the gates of hell to dwell in therein. Evil is the abode for the arrogant. For the arrogant. One more verse. This is really getting deep on arrogance. And again, I'm not trying to push the Bible or the Quran on you. I just want you to put yourself in a mindset of forgiveness, accepting someone's plea for forgiveness, and not being arrogant. Because not wanting to say, will you please forgive me, has a lot to do with arrogance. Listen to this one. We're still in the Quran, chapter 15, verse 30. Listen to this. So the angels prostrated themselves all together. Not so Iblis, meaning the devil. He refused to be among those who prostrated themselves. God said, oh, Iblis, what is your reason for not being among those who prostrated themselves? Look what Iblis said. I'm not one to prostrate myself before man, whom thou didst created from sounding clay, from mud molded into shape. God said, well, get down from here. You're rejected and accursed. This is not for the arrogant, meaning paradise. Oh, I don't believe in all that. But look what Iblis said. God said, why didn't you prostrate yourself? Everyone else did when he created them. And the devil said, I'm not one to prostrate myself before man. You created him out of sounding clay and mud, and I'm made of fire. So what's the color of mud? It's black. So right here, the Quran, for all y'all saying y'all following an Arab religion, right here it's telling you that the first man was made from sounding clay and mud. And he said, get out of here. This isn't for the arrogant. So arrogant. I'm going to repeat that. Why didn't you prostrate, Iblis? That's an Arabic word for the devil. He said, I'm not prostrating myself. You made them out of mold and out of mud and clay, which is black. Mud's not white. And you made me out of fire. I'm not prostrating before anyone. So now, first man was a black man. The Quran's telling you that. So now, arrogance. Arrogance is what's causing a lot of this plea, someone not asking for a plea of forgiveness, just being arrogant, right? Sometimes, even if you're right, follow me on this, family. This is not a religious or a theology class. I'm just trying to get this across to you because most likely you're already doing these things anyway, no matter what you claim. Sometimes you got to bite your tongue for the sake of peace. Remember, I think it was in Hebrews, it said, make every effort to live in peace. Okay, stop right there. Every effort to live in peace. Every effort to live in peace. I want to give you a beautiful example, then I'll be done about, we already talked about humbling yourself. We already talked about living in peace and making a plea for forgiveness, how it's destroying families, friends not speaking, family members not speaking, mother not speaking to daughter, a daughter not speaking to mother, son not speaking to son. A son not speaking to father, brothers not speaking, sisters not speaking. This is hurtful. And how can we as a black community move forward until we correct these things about the gossip, like in part 1 and part 2, fighting the urge to fight the temptation of not to gossip and slander, and not accepting forgiveness or asking the plea, will you please forgive me? How can we move forward as a community if we don't correct these things, family? We got to correct these things. We got enough stacked against us. Let me give you a beautiful example about biting the bullet, so to speak, meaning in some instances you could actually be right, but for the sake of peace, you may have to take a step back just for the sake of peace, meaning putting whatever the relationship is in front of yourself. Because remember, the verse in Corinthians says it's not self-seeking. Let me give you this example. And again, this isn't a religion class. One time during the life of Prophet Muhammad, meaning Muhammad from 1400 years ago, the one who brought Islam as we know it. The Muslims at that time in Arabia were very poor, especially him pushing the message that he was pushing. They were very poor. So Muhammad and his companions one time, they were really strained for money. So he went to a Jewish man, meaning Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and asked for a loan. The Jewish man gave him the loan, and they agreed that Muhammad and his followers would pay the Jewish man back in a 30-day period. That sounds familiar, right? What this Jewish man did, he had another agenda when he loaned Muhammad and his followers the money. In his mind, he was saying to himself, according to the story, I want to see if this man is really who he say he is. They call him the messenger of God and a prophet of God. But I know from the Jewish scriptures that a man of God or prophet of God, they're patient, they're giving, they're not arrogant, right? All these attributes, and they're not self-centered, and they have a lot of patience. So I want to test this man to see if he's really who he say he is. This is the Jewish man that gave them the money. So he gives Muhammad and his followers the money, right? They are out in the public one day. This Jewish man comes up to Muhammad and says, "Where's my money?" And the prophet said, brother, we agreed on I would pay you back within 30 days. It's only like a week or 2 weeks in. And the prophet was very humble, spoke very low. This man started making a scene saying, see, Muhammad and his followers, they're bad payers. They don't pay back their debt. And Umar, which was a companion of the Prophet, he's known to be very fiery, always ready to get it in. I mean, he was very fiery. He said, "Oh, messenger of God, just give me the word and I'll take his head off." And the Prophet said, "No, Umar, what I need from you right now is to encourage me to do what's right. We owe him the money. He's asking for it early, but either way, it's his money. Go to the treasury and get the money." Umar was very upset. The man was being very disrespectful and making a scene, and he broke his the deal and agreement he had. He gave him 30 days. It wasn't 30 days yet, and he was embarrassing him from the people, making it seem like Muhammad and the followers didn't pay back the loan, and they were in debt, but he really wasn't. He didn't give him time. He said, "No, go get him the money." So reluctantly, Umar got the money. Muhammad said, "Give him what he's owed." And Umar was still fighting. He said, "Don't worry about it. Give him what he's owed." Umar gave him what he was owed. And on top of that, listen to this. Listen to the beauty in this. Muhammad said, "And give him an extra 10 dirhams." That's like an Arabic word for money. I'm not sure how much that's worth, but he gave him 10 extra. Let's say that was worth 20 extra or 30 extra dollars. And Umar said, "Why would we give him extra?" He said, "Bro, I don't like the way you talk to him," because they got into it because of him disrespecting the Prophet and his companions. He said, "Give him an extra 10 dirhams. I don't like the way you talk to him." So he gave him the extra money. Days later, this same man who made this scene and they gave the money back saw Umar and said, "Man, why'd you do that? You knew you gave us a certain amount of time." He said, "Y'all did nothing wrong." He said, "I'm so-and-so. I'm this Jewish man. Y'all know me. And I wanted to see if Muhammad was who he said he was. And he proved to be because of his patience, because of his humbleness, and so on and so forth. All the attributes that he showed me that he is who he said he was." What a beautiful story. And Muhammad actually asked for forgiveness. He said, "I didn't mean to inconvenience you or anything." That's how the story went. But sometimes you got to bite the bullet for the sake of peace. Like that verse says, do whatever you can to strive for peace. So a lot of this has to do with arrogance. We got to humble ourselves. If you do something wrong, if you transgress someone, and especially if you're unjust, humble yourself. Childish people do childish things, but now that I'm a man, what exactly does it say? When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I gave up childish ways. Not humbling yourself and saying, "Will you please forgive me?" That's immature and it's arrogant. And you've seen what the Quran said about arrogance. There's no place for you here for the arrogant. Please, for the sake of our community, for the sake of your relationship with your mother, with your sister, with your brother, with your friend, ask for forgiveness if you've done something wrong. And on the other side, don't be so puffed up with pride as if you haven't done something wrong, depending on what it is, to at least consider forgiving that person for the sake of peace. We got too much going on in our communities. How are we going to move forward if we don't practice these basic principles of not slandering each other? Because I'm bringing it all together tonight. Not slandering each other, not gossiping, and having a heart of just rancor in our heart, where we can't humble ourselves and say, "Please forgive me," with sincerity, and accept someone's forgiveness. Somewhere in the scripture it says, I ask for forgiveness up to 70 times a day. God is always forgiving us. It's so many things that we do wrong that we don't even realize it. We don't even realize it. Small things. And relationships have been severed, and families have been broken for years and years and years. And it's totally unnecessary, because thinking like a child, not being mature, and not being mature and being arrogant. Arrogance gets you nowhere. and it destroys relationships. This kills me. I hear and see this stuff on Facebook. People going back and forth, slandering each other, not forgiving each other. You only get one family. You only get one mother, one father. You may have a few brothers and sisters. One of my blood sisters is gone. I miss her every day. And there's no way I can replace her. So when I see all this going back and forth with brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers, friends, and it takes a lot for someone to admit that they're wrong. Salute to those who may have done something wrong, made an error in judgment, and you humbled yourself to say, I'm sorry, and salute to those who said, I forgive you. Again, this is self-reflection. Self-reflection. Please forgive me. Striving to heal our community. Think like a man, meaning a man and woman. So man means man and woman when it's talking in scripture. Leave off childish ways. If you transgress someone, especially if you've done an injustice, humble yourself in all sincerity and say, please forgive me. And then don't be arrogant. Don't be puffed up in pride, because we all do things wrong, especially if it's your family and someone who you love. And say, it may take you a day or two, and say, I forgive you. Let's find ways to get back on track. In Islam, we're not allowed to be mad at our brother past 3 days, then both of you are wrong. Did you know that? We are not, if you have an ought with your brother, and that's language in the Bible, but if you have a disagreement with your brother in Islam, it is our duty, both sides, to patch that up within 3 days. I leave you all in words of peace. This is the Hour of Power with Brother Shareef. Again, self-reflection. Please forgive me. Striving to heal our community, part 3. This is Brother Shareef with the Hour of Power. Subscribe and share the channel. Share these messages so we can heal the mind, body, and soul of our people and our community. In our community, we need each other. We need each other. I'm pleading with you. Please share this message. Hour Power. Brother Shareef. Thank you for listening, and thank you to those who are supporting this channel. Assalamu alaikum.